I'm Arthur Hiller. I'm CEO of Antyllus Therapeutics, which is a cardiovascular company, very early stage, looking for a drug to treat abdominal aortic aneurysms. And I do a number of other business advisory and consulting roles as well. So I was in the industry back when it was very traditional for people to start as a sales rep and work their way up into sales management, marketing, and that sort of thing, and that's what I did. I don't think that's the norm today, but I spent a few years on the sales side in the pharmaceutical industry, very traditional detailing. And then I became a district sales manager, went into product management and marketing, and then gradually moved up from there. It's really all about communication, and it's really critical to be able to effectively communicate, work on focusing your communication skills, being concise, being specific, and it's also critical to build key relationships. And the combination of being able to communicate and have those relationships, I think, is a great mix. So I think one of the unique aspects of the biotech space relative to other industries is the fact that, especially in this time, things are moving so quickly. And in order to think creatively, you have to be aware of the trends and be aware of all of the new technologies and initiatives that are taking place. Because without the knowledge of that, it's hard to figure out where you can stand out. And so many of those other initiatives have the ability to trigger creative thoughts as well. So I'm real big on understanding what's happening in the industry, keeping track of everything from newsletters to podium-type events to conferences, and being able to understand how whatever project you're working on, whether it be a specific product or a company or whatever, can not only fit in to those trends, but also find creative ways of stepping above what's already happening out there. Well, diversity is a critical theme. Unfortunately, I don't think it's as easy to implement as a lot of people would like to think it is. A lot of it is driven by access and by the specific job descriptions that have to be fulfilled. And I think, again, the premise of networking is that you get a broad access to not only viewpoints but also other relationships, and those other relationships can give you access to people who otherwise might not be interested in applying for your role or willing to apply for your role, and so that allows you to seek out the diverse candidate if that candidate doesn't come to you. Absolutely. So I not only have had a mentor, I've had lots of mentors, and I don't think a mentor necessarily is somebody that you approach and say, will you be my mentor? That's not really what it's all about. I think you look to different people to provide different levels of input and knowledge and experience, and depending on what your needs are at a specific time, your mentors are actually going to be quite different, and you may emulate somebody who's a mentor without formally signing on to being a mentor. On the other hand, you may have a relationship with somebody that's so strong a relationship that you gain insight and access to the way they think and their basis of experience, but they've never actually formally been approached by you or never formally acknowledged that they're actually a mentor, but they really are. And I think that being able to emulate people, being able to learn from their experience, and being able to gain insights that you otherwise couldn't access without having walked in their shoes is what mentors are all about. Well, so I actually had one mentor who was chairman of one of my first startups, who after we sold the startup, he said, be sure you continue networking. And he said, take 15 minutes every week to write a letter, and take an hour to call somebody or meet somebody. And that's all it takes. And I thought that was great advice, because a lot of people think, oh, I don't have time for networking. But if you only think of it as a snippet like that, where you reach out to somebody you haven't talked to, you invite somebody for lunch or coffee, that kind of an interaction actually provides great depth ultimately if you continue doing that and kind of spread the wealth amongst a number of people. Well, I think it goes back to the comment I made earlier about staying on top of trends. I don't think that if you're in metals and mining or gas and electric or something like that, you have to necessarily be as attuned to what's happening week to week and literally day to day. But those changes in our industry, because of either emerging new technologies or changes that emerge on the investment side, or changes from an economic perspective, or even global changes, which are now so important in terms of influencing how we make decisions, those are week to week actually quite different. And again, as I said earlier, I think in order to think creatively about how you position your company, how you position your product, how you think about future trends and scenarios that might shape your piece of the industry, I think that's all quite different from a lot of the more staid industries that don't have that level of change. I think leadership styles depend a lot on company needs, and those vary depending on where the company is in its growth, what sort of organizational structure you have. I think there's a time when you have to build consensus and be a consensus-driven leader of a company, but there are other times when as a company grows, you really need to make hard decisions, and they can't be driven by consensus. So leadership style has to be, I think, consistent with what the needs are at the time, and they will vary depending on the stage of the company.